Ciao and benvenuto. Hello and welcome to Passport to Pittsburgh Adventures. I'm your host, Kim Adley, and I'm happy to be here at Bella Sera, a local Pittsburgh Tuscan venue, but I am going to take you on an adventure today, an adventure of 10 days in Tuscany, a tour that I was happy and blessed to be able to take this summer. And so come along with me. No passport, no suitcase required. Just join in for the show as we travel all the way to Italy for 10 days in Tuscany tour. Here I am in the beautiful wine cellar of Bella Sera, and I'm happy to introduce my guest today for Passport to Pittsburgh Adventures, my friend and restaurateur, chef, and tour designer, wow. Jason Capps.
Makes me sound very important. Thanks for having me.
It's all true.
Welcome to Bella Sera.
Thank you.
Benvenuto.
Oh, thank you. So nice to be here. And this, Jason, is such a cool space we're in. Tell me a little bit about it.
This wine cellar actually was a gift from my uncle when we first built and opened back in 2006. So it was one of those gifts that actually cost a few dollars because he said, "I'm buying you a wine cellar for your venue." He's in the catering world as well, but it obviously had to do a little work to manage it, to make it fit and work and so on. So I designed the wrought iron, and the wine cellar's all heart redwood, and it's beautiful. It's not temperature controlled, but it's a beautiful space. It's where we keep all the good grapes, the grape juice.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I see that you have opened a bottle of wine for us.
Speaking of which.
And it's perfect location for what we're going to be talking about today, which is your 10-day in Tuscany tour. Which I was very blessed to be able to attend this past May, and which we want to be able to take our guests and my viewers on a virtual tour and tell them about it so that if they want to take the tour, they can too.
Sure.
So tell us about what this wine is from the trip, isn't it?
It is.
And
this is from Villa Calzinaia.
Oh, I remember it.
In Chianti.
Yes.
Sebastiano Capone is the Count. You remember the Count?
I do remember the Count.
He took us all around the property, explaining everything from the family crest to all the details since the, I think, mid-1600s. The family has owned.
It was a very impressive historic place.
One of the last three family-owned properties, original family-owned properties in Chianti.
And we learned a lot. We learned about the smell and the color and the taste, and we also learned about this symbol on the bottle, this rooster, and which shows people if they want to buy wine here in America that this is from the Classico Chianti region.
Right. The black rooster. There's a story behind it. It's actually a very interesting story about how they. The crowing of the rooster in the morning of daybreak between Florence and Siena, because there was always been this little rift between the two, and they wanted to establish the boundaries of the Chianti region. So they let the roosters go, but there's a little more mystery to it than that. The one sabotaged their rooster and kept it in the dark all day, and vice versa. So that's an interesting story.
It's a very good story.
But if you're looking for Chianti Classico, it needs to have that black rooster on it. Otherwise, it's not necessarily considered indigenous. DOGC, some of the regulatory bodies for
exactly.
purity.
Those were some of my favorite days on the tour in the Classico Chianti region. So we should try it.
We should stop talking about it and just try
let's.
it. Salute.
Salute. Let's talk about the tour, and it's so fabulous and so packed with wonderful eating, drinking, places to see, and out of the tourist path.
Correct.
So I want to talk a little bit about that and how long you've been doing it and how you decided to, and how you curated it yourself.
The very first time I went to Italy, which it's been over 25 trips now in the last 13 years. My family's in the south in Puglia, and the minute I landed in the airport in Roma and got out of the city in my rental car, I knew that I needed to share Italy with people. It was everything I imagined it would be, but I really wanted to go first to authenticate the kind of the design of the space, the building we're in at Bella Sera.
Yes, right.
I couldn't really say this is a replica of a Tuscan villa without having going to a Tuscan villa myself. So the tours, I started in 2017, and I think we're coming up on our third or fourth one here this October. So I decided the response has been that positive to do 2 a year now.
Awesome.
We capture just outside the main tourist season, mid to late May, second half of May, and the mid to latter part of October. It's similar to the Western Pennsylvania weather. So it's very possible that the weather we're experiencing today, 80 and sunny and beautiful, is probably what they're having there. It could be hotter or colder, but generally speaking, they have milder winters, but pretty similar climate.
Well, so, I can say that in May, the weather was beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about these 10 beautiful days that we spent. Each day had a different itinerary and a wonderful focus. And after we got settled into our wonderful first location, which was very agritourism centric, we stayed actually on the grounds of an olive oil farm surrounded by 12,000 olive trees at Campo Romano.
Yep, beautiful place.
It was a beautiful place. And then the first full day, we went to the most wonderful place, just so picturesque, the Cinque Terre.
Yeah.
And that was our first little adventure. And we were going to go by boat, but we ended up going in by the road. It was just so beautiful. We were in the city of Vernazza. And so just tell us about why you picked the Cinque Terre.
I mean, it's called, the trip is called 10 Days in Tuscany, so we actually leave Tuscany briefly to go to Liguria, which is where the Cinque Terre is. The 5 cities are iconic. I mean, it's one of the most touristed parts of Italy, besides the Amalfi Coast and the major cities like Venice and Rome. But it's just special, and I would have loved to seen it by boat. It's such an interesting, visual coming into the cities, because we, had a chartered boat.
Right.
We typically do a pesto lesson on the boat with the chef from Sardinia.
Oh, wow.
So what we did later that night, we would normally have done on the boat, that part of it. And it's just a beautiful scenery, and the food is wonderful. It's very, pesto is a very important condiment or ingredient there.
From there we went, I remember our dinner that evening was in Santa Teresa, and that was near the Cinque Terre.
Right.
And that's where we harvested the mussels just an hour before we ate them,
those are good.
and then cleaned them, and then that's where we had the pesto making lesson with the chef.
Right.
It was fantastic. Oh, and I have to say, one of the highlights was the Italian jazz band there that night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that group is a lot of fun.
In a phrase I feel how you have to turtle doves be and blue when they love. That's the kind of magic music will make with our lips when we kiss.
But adding a little bit of live music in Italian style, the guy was fun.
They were great. They were singing Frank Sinatra Italian style. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And just that whole experience of hands-on making our own dinner was wonderful. And I have some footage of the pizza tossing of the dough when we were making the. Yeah, it was wonderful.
That's in Lerici. That's their famous dish, which is really only 1 or 2 towns over. The dough with the cheese.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah. It's like a mascarpone inside the dough, and I love that. So.
Oh, well, the food, it was just like over the top. Every dining experience we had was just so wonderful and memorable. So that was our first day. Second day we went to that magical Carrara was the second day. And that is the most valuable, beautiful, purest white marble in the world.
Yep.
And so we went to the quarry. And so I love that you added that in.
Yeah, that day is all about, we call it the white day. So we go inside the caves. First of all, I fly a dear friend, Alberto, in from Formentera, from Spain, who used to live, his family used to own one of these caves in Carrara, in Fentescritti. And he, I buy his ticket, him and his wife come in for the weekend, do a little business.
Great.
Yeah, but they spend the day with us. He's very well, how do we say, respected in that city. So whenever we're walking around with Alberto, we seem to get whatever we want. So.
Everybody knew Alberto wherever we went.
Yeah,
Yes.
so after we go inside the cave a half mile to understand how they mine from the inside, we then go to the top and rented Range Rovers and Land Rovers,
Right.
and all the way to the top, which is, I would say, not for the faint of heart. It's pretty.
I can speak to that personally. 3,000 feet up with no guardrail.
Yeah.
It was. It was really, really something
Yeah,
to
you
see.
have to put your faith
Yes.
in the drivers and know that
Yes.
they've done this hundreds of times. And
Exactly.
So after we visualize it from the middle inside and then from the top, then we go to the bottom and we meet Algerio, who is they call him the anarchist of the small village in Colonnata, which is famous for its lardo. Which, if you've never been to
lardo.
Tuscany, you don't find butter in Tuscany a whole lot, but you will find lardo. It's basically, pork rendered pork fat, and but it's aged and cured in marble.
Yes.
From the Carrara. So I thought it'd be neat to kind of show the other impact of how marble has on food too, not just the David or some
Exactly.
of the famous statues in the world. So.
Exactly, used to produce this, what is now an iconic food of
Yeah.
that region, and what was once a food for the working quarryman
That's
to
it.
eat to keep his
sustain
energy
it.
up,
Yep.
is now a delicacy
Yeah.
in Tuscany.
Yeah.
So that was a
We
treat.
saw it a few times.
We
at
saw
other
it.
places.
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Yes, we did. And
So-
and when in Rome, I did try it, and it's very good. Yes. So from Carrara, our next day, I believe we had our pasta making class, which
Yeah.
was one of my favorite days, in the kitchen of our hostess Elena
Yeah.
at the Campo Romano, and she brought in these two lovely Italian women, Sofia and I can't remember the other lady's
Yeah.
name, but they spoke no English. But it didn't matter because they were able to teach us.
Yeah, it's mostly technique. We made tortellini.
Yes.
And taught us how to wrap it around our finger. First to make the dough, the process, which is quite simple. Unfortunately, oftentimes it gets overlooked how easy it is, and we don't have sometimes the right ingredients either. The quality of the flour.
Their flour.
And the eggs the chickens are outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't get any fresher. So, but that's a fun day. I like the.
Such a fun day. And then after we make the pasta, then the ladies prep a beautiful lunch for us,
Yeah.
and we ate in the family dining room. And that home has been, how old is that home?
I think the Toscanello cigar family originally owned that villa, and that goes back to the mid 1600s too.
Yeah, that was a very wonderful rustic place to stay. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. It was a wonderful way to be immersed
Yeah.
in the culture.
It's funny you say that word immerse, because I was
Yeah.
actually trying to think of what to call this
Immersion.
journey.
Immersion.
Yeah, I was going to call it like I cubed, immersed in Italy, and but we ended up, I think, 10 days in Tuscany, more or less said everything, in a different way.
Right. So the next day we went to by the sea, and we went to a beautiful city called Viareggio,
Yeah.
and I love the beach there. We walked the beach, and then we had that wonderful cocktail party on that rooftop.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of my favorite little promenades. It's a little, I'd say maybe 10-block stretch.
Yes.
Viareggio is next to Lido di Camaiore. Some really neat coastal towns, north still of Livorno and Pisa and everything. But it's very much Tuscany, and it's summertime. Is those hundreds of tents lined up, the
That was
perfect
beautiful,
umbrellas.
colorful, yeah.
It's
And great shopping and great gelato
Yeah.
along the beach
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so that was a great day.
Yep.
From there, one of my favorite cities, we moved in and we stayed at a beautiful Villa Kelly.
in Lucca.
In Lucca, and we were outside of this wonderful town, this wonderful city called Lucca. And I was so impressed with Lucca because of the walls that still remain.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of the only cities that wasn't bombed in World War II, and just you can walk that. And,
Yeah.
and what did some people rode bikes.
Yeah, it's Lucca has a I wouldn't call it a checkered history. They were inherently paranoid when they built the town with the walls to protect their silk and their banking, and this is during the Medici times. The wall is legit 35, 40 feet thick and about the same height, with big doors that still work.
Yes.
25-foot doors,
Yeah.
and with spikes on them. You could just see the picture back in those times with the guys riding in on their horses at dusk to get inside the
Yeah.
walls. They're like friendlies and then experiencing it. But I love Lucca so much, I decided to buy a house there. So, and which we,
Well, I know we
were
have
talking about.
a lovely pizza party
Yeah.
at your apartment.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
So I have the upstairs apartment rented out to an Australian friend, and the downstairs I have on Airbnb when I'm not there. So
So it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And Lucca just filled with all those narrow streets and that wonderful piazza that used to be their Colosseum,
Right.
and then Puccini's birthplace. All wonderful things
Yeah.
there, and great food too.
the Lucca is spectacular for me in so many ways, and attractive, just because it's an hour to Cinque Terre, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. You could be in Milan in by 3 hours by train. Rome, same. Venice, the same. Florence, I can literally walk out of my door, spend €6, get on a bus 2 blocks away, and be in Florence in 55 minutes to have lunch and turn around and go back. So
yeah,
I mean, it's
good location.
it is
Good
Yeah.
location.
And the people, it's super.
Yeah.
It's Tuscany.
Brava! And then we ate at a couple really wonderful places, but the one restaurant that stood out in my mind, and you maybe remind me of the name of it, but where they serve the pasta in the wheel of cheese and the bistecca.
Le Conde di Sesto. Yeah, that's my friend Aurelio and his mom Ida and Lamberto. The building that's in Borgo al Manzana, near the Devil's Bridge.
Yes, and we went to the Devil's
Yeah,
Bridge too. That
yeah.
was really a great
Yeah, that
stop.
building itself has been either a hotel or restaurant since 1398. So
Goodness.
it's just amazing. And their
Yeah.
family certainly hasn't owned it all that time. But wonderful people. Aurelio is a great chef. We follow each other on Instagram. He's always in interesting places. They make their own wine and their own olive oil and lardo and things. So, but to have that pasta done, very simple. It's like cacio e pepe, which is a famous Roman dish. Literally pepper, pasta, and cheese, and a little bit of the water from the pasta
Right.
that contains a little bit of that starch.
Yes.
So, and she does it right
She
in
did
the
a
wheel.
table side right
Yeah.
in the wheel of the Parmigiano Reggiano and tosses that up, and it
Yeah.
all just melted in there.
What's special, I think, is because the chefs that are in the kitchen know that I'm a chef and the people are there to experience the food. So a lot of times, instead of offering a choice between risotto and a pasta for
Yeah.
a course, they send both of them out. So
Right.
it's
It was an abundance of food. It was
Yeah.
an abundance of food.
Yeah.
So from there, the next day I loved too. It was one of my favorite days was when we went truffle hunting.
yes.
And we met Alberto and his dog, the Truffalante, who's been doing this since 1974. And we followed him into the woods with his dog and found these beautiful truffles.
Yeah.
And then we had a truffle lunch.
Yep.
And it's just amazing that this fungus is so valuable.
It is really amazing.
I loved the place where we stayed there, the Villa Cali. It was a more traditional kind of Italian
Right.
Tuscan villa.
Right.
And while I was there, I don't know if you know, there was a wedding.
Oh, that's
And
right, I
a
heard
big
that, yeah.
party outside, and then fireworks right outside
Yeah.
my window that
That's-
night. Yeah.
Were you sleeping or? Were you
Not after the
that, yeah,
fireworks.
right.
The next day, on our way to our next place where we were going to stay, we stopped at one of the most memorable days for me was at the Italian American Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
And it was right around Memorial Day.
That's why I stopped. And it dawned on me the first time, literally, it wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah.
But as we started to drive by, I said, oh my gosh, it's Memorial Day tomorrow.
Yes.
And we need to stop here because it's all the Americans buried in Italy, fought defending all the different wars and from as far back, as World War I. So any American troop that died there, that somehow his body didn't make it back to the U.S. was honored there
Exactly.
and buried there.
It was
so.
a very poignant stop.
Yeah.
I'm glad you added it in.
Yeah.
And what was nice is when we got there, there was a troop of Boy Scouts there, American and Italian Boy Scouts, and they were cleaning the crosses
Yeah.
and putting out Italian and American crosses
Yeah.
for Memorial Day.
Nice.
It was really a very nice day.
Yeah, I agree.
Other American Boy Scouts are here.
I don't know. There's a lot of us here, though.
We're getting into the Classico Chianti region then by now on our trip.
Yep.
And we met some very interesting people. And we met this gentleman in Panzano.
Oh, Dario. the
Dario,
butcher, yeah.
tell him about the butcher of Tuscany.
My friend Dario.
Ah,
Dario is a character. He basically put the small town of Panzano on the map.
Right.
Nobody knew about it. The short version is Mario Batali, the famous chef.
Yes.
He learned. He was being part of a book. Bill Buford wrote for the New Yorker. Met Mario Batali at a party in New York, 3 o'clock in the morning. Jokingly said, "I would quit my job tomorrow if I could come work for you in the kitchen at Babbo." And Mario said, "Do it, you're in." And he said, "I'm going to write a book about it." And Mario said, "That's okay." So he learned, and he also went to Italy because he wanted to know where Mario learned how to cut meat. Mario did it's called a stage, a 6-month training under Dario. And so Buford found that Dario to be so, what's the word, eccentric.
Oh yeah, he's a character.
Yeah, and but Dario Cecchini, if you Google the butcher, Dario Cecchini usually comes up the first 8 or 10 out of the top 10. He comes to America. He does benefits with Harry Connick Jr. I remember one time he said he was going to Viareggio when I was there, and I asked him if he wanted to stop at my place in Lucca, and he couldn't because he was going to George Clooney's house that night to cook.
Wow.
Yeah, so but
Yeah.
right after he said that, he told me to the side that he said, "I would much rather hang out with us, people of our, like our."
Yeah.
He doesn't get the stardom is not his goal. He just wants
Right.
to produce high quality. He's a butcher.
Right.
His family's, he's 7 generations, going back again to the 1600s. But if you come around the corner, there's been times when I went there with my daughters, and I've come around the corner and all you hear is Mozart blaring in the streets, speakers outside.
From his butcher shop.
Yeah, and he'll be standing inside with 2 big chunks of butcher or ribeye,
Yeah.
saying "to beef or not to beef." That is the question. So I mean, he's that's the extent of his.
Well, the day
his
we were,
English is limited.
the day we were there was a little street fair going on, and the tiny little town that it is, was just bustling with people, and they were passing out glasses of Chianti at the
Yeah.
butcher shop,
Yes.
and I brought home some of his salt.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I'll warn you, if you share that with people, you're going to end up bringing it back for them every time you go, or you'll be calling me asking me to get you more of the salt.
Okay.
So I use it often. It's
I
great
got
for
my connection.
Yeah, right. It's great for beef and pork,
Yes.
primarily. But yeah, Dario's just an incredible guy. I think what really allowed him and I to connect is when I did a small story for Upper St. Clair magazine on Anthony Bourdain when he came to Town Talk, Town Hall, in
Yes.
I think 2007. I got a chance to interview and meet him afterwards, and his company, his agent called us back 6 months later and asked to help promote his show in Pittsburgh. So I got a chance to meet Bourdain again. My staff got to meet him as well. So by the time, and I had met Mario Batali in New York at the Spotted Pig prior to my first time going to meet Dario. It was almost like Providence. I mean, by the time I got there, I had met 2 of his best friends from America, Anthony Bourdain and Mario Batali.
Right.
And so I mentioned those to Dario, and we just instantly connected.
Well, you must be so glad that you were able to interview Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah. I mean, it was a 10-minute walking out to the
but
car, but
still.
he's deeply missed.
Great loss
already. And
yes.
I got a chance to talk to Dario last month, 2 weeks after Anthony passed away, and he was still very sad. And it's just I don't know. I don't even know if I can really quite even.
It's really hard to
still
grasp,
explain
isn't it? Yeah.
So.
Well, that was a wonderful day. We went to a monastery as well that day, which was beautiful. And then we started to really explore in depth Chianti Classico country. And we then met our guest guide, who really brought it all together, Gino Rossi, who just had some wonderful stories to tell.
And through the little knowledge that I have of the wine, as I was saying before, we'll never drink the same wine again twice, because it changes with the time. Oh, beautiful, just like us. So the older the better is not true. The older the different is true. And if you appreciate every single step of your journey, the goal is not the goal. The goal is just the beginning of another journey. So our life is just a beautiful journey. It's up to us to enjoy every single moment. even if sometimes it reserves some bad moments. But thank God we say there are bad wines. We can recognize the good ones. That's why we allow the French to still produce. So, the toast, Leslie, are you with us? We celebrate the gift of wine every day. For those who respect it, it will always give happiness and friendship. Salute!
Salute!
And the sound of the bell will scare the devil away.
As soon as I met the guy, I instantly fell in love with him. He's a philosopher.
Yes.
He takes the product and the wine so serious in the passionate sense, but not, he loves to joke around and
Yes.
have a good time. So really important part of that region. He represents Chianti very well.
Our last day was culminates the tour in Florence, of course, the heart of Tuscany there.
Right.
And you just have one day there, but people can extend and stay then
Sure.
in Florence to explore that city, which has a wealth of art and beautiful churches and so much more that can be. You could spend a whole another week there in Florence.
right.
But we end at a very beautiful spot up on the mountain. And remind me the name of it.
Villa San Michele.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, and that's in Fiesole, so it overlooks. You can see all the terracotta roofs across Florence, including the
The
Duomo.
view's spectacular.
Yeah, it's a very special place. That's where Michelangelo and Dante were rumored to summer back in the 12th century.
Hang out and get their
Yeah.
inspiration in the
Yeah.
12th century.
Yep.
And it was inspirational, it really was. But last day was in Florence, Jason, and we got to see the market, and then we had that wonderful lunch up on the mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was just a fantastic trip. And when is your next one?
October 14th through the 24th.
Do you have any room?
I have 2 spots left.
2 spots left, and
Yeah.
then after that, next is
I would
May
be
2019.
incentivized. Yeah, if anybody's interested, I don't know when this is going to air, but if there's an opportunity, if anybody wants to go, 10daysintuscany.com, and I would be incentivized to sell these last 2 spots. So,
Awesome.
But otherwise, May of 19, we have an ad coming out in Table Magazine. Other stories, coming out as well.
Yes, we do.
So I take these very seriously in terms of being creative with it, but also I want people to have a good time.
Absolutely.
I help them book their flights, make sure that they're situated. If they want to extend, go to Venice. I have contacts in some other major cities. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a good time.
It really is. If you are interested in traveling to Tuscany and experiencing all these wonderful...
Let me see. Who wouldn't be interested in traveling to Tuscany?
Exactly. If you're seriously interested in traveling to Tuscany, experiencing these wonderful 10 days in Tuscany on the 10-day in Tuscany tour, we will provide the information on how to reach Jason and find out more about it at the end of the show. So just look for the link. Thanks so much, Jason.
My pleasure.
Maybe we could take a little look around some of the other things here. If you can't get to Tuscany, you can always come to Bella Sera for a little flavor of Tuscany right here in Pittsburgh. Jason, this is a beautiful space. Thank you so much for the tour of beautiful Bella Sera. What does Bella Sera mean?
Beautiful evening.
Beautiful evening, and I'm sure you've hosted many beautiful evenings for people there.
I think we're over 500 weddings now in the last 12 years. We're coming up on our 12th anniversary in October, so pretty sure we cracked the 500 mark. So predominantly for weddings, but everything else. Sports banquets, we're open for lunch weekdays. It's a great space. You'll see the tent and this pond, and this is our latest addition.
Yeah, I wanted you to tell me about this beautiful new space. This
I live next door, and I walk down here at night and just look at it in awe and amazement. It's really, I let my contractors do their thing. They're experts, Mike and Bruce, in their respective fields with moving rocks and waterfalls and just the landscaping, and what a fabulous day we have today.
But you've captured the feeling of that beautiful place that we spent an afternoon. So congratulations, and thank you so much for the fabulous visit here. And I hope you all enjoyed our adventure today on Passport to Pittsburgh Adventures. Grazie for joining me, and arrivederci until next time. Grazie, Jason.
Her Italian's gotten better since 2 weeks before Tuscany.
CC. Ciao, ciao.